Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the AUD podcast channel. I'm your host, Khaled Abul-Jubain. We are honored to have Roberto Croci as our guest on the show today. Roberto is the CEO and founder of Creative Rebels, a transformation company that helps individuals and organizations break rules that hold them back. With over 20 years of experience working for the likes of Microsoft and Google, Roberto's passion lies in innovation, startups, and people. Relationship-driven, he has bridged the gap between corporates and startups across more than 20 countries, helping them develop real solutions that solve real-world problems. In this episode, you'll learn how to create a portfolio strategy, the differences between an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, the importance of acting with intention, and discovering yourself. Now, we spoke for almost 2 hours, so we've decided to split this episode into 2 parts. You're now listening to part 1. So please join me in welcoming to the show, Mr. Roberto Croci. And you're still with Microsoft, right?
No, I left Microsoft in September, early September.
Okay.
Yeah. You probably have seen a lot of turbulent times around the tech companies these days.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of change happening. Especially, what I was doing at Microsoft was not really revenue generating, right? So I was managing director of a segment called startups.
You were managing the ecosystems, right? And
managing the ecosystem, but also the relationship at all levels, right? With investors, with family offices, VCs, with the startups, of course, corporates, academia. But the thing is, as an offer, Microsoft gives incentives to startups like any other cloud vendor. So they're not revenue generating for a period of time, 1 to 2 years usually. So it's one of those things when things change or there are reorgs that say, look, it's a different mindset right now for tech companies. They have other priorities. They're looking more into focusing on profits rather than growth. So it's a different time.
Was that challenging for you to when it came?
Look, at the beginning, because I really loved what I was doing. I really loved what I was doing. I was embedded in the ecosystem. I'm still embedded, right? But the job itself, I really loved it. So it was challenging to let it go, right? So because things change in life and priorities change, things change. So
of course
you just need to embrace it. And you see now there are many other things that I'm up to. So definitely exciting, right? So it's just the transition and accepting or let things go is always in our nature difficult to.
Of course. And because you were there for quite a while, right?
In Dubai, in the UAE?
Yeah.
It's about now 8 years.
8 years?
8 years, yes.
Wow.
I have 3 kids. 2 of them are born here.
Oh, beautiful.
They're Dubaians or call it whatever you want. So they're born here. The third one is 6 months old.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Brand new. Congratulations.
Brand new.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome. And are you boys, girls? Or?
3 boys. No
3
diversity.
boys? Yeah,
no diversity.
3 boys. Okay. It makes your life easier.
When someone say, you're building a football team, and say, no, streetball, basketball, 3 versus 3 is fine.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
No, thank you.
Congratulations. Beautiful. And I guess after I'm just letting it roll, and we can because I usually do my intros beforehand anyway, so it's fine. I write it up, so it's fine.
You will edit afterwards.
Okay. I do everything, so don't worry about it. I'm curious now, as we're talking about this transition phase for you when you just left. Was your first instinct to start your own thing, or did you think, should I join stay in the tech world and join another tech space, or did you look at I see the picture now, given your experience with Microsoft, and how the perception is changing and the priorities, like you said, are changing to more maybe profit focused. Maybe it doesn't feel or resonate with you like it once did.
No, look, the process has been something like apart a few days of accepting, right? So and then the situation and looking into the process has been actually embracing it. Like, so what else, right? So and when you start thinking that way, you say, oh, look, there is just plenty of opportunities. Even if we are in a recession, probably most likely we are living, in tough times and whatever, right? So, but look at things that can be done and who needs help, or where are problems, where are areas where people would need help, and say, look, there is just opportunities out there, right? So that mindset is, there are a lot of things that can be done. So mentally, if you ask me about the process, mentally I thought, look, one way I could leverage my expertise, my background is if there are any international companies willing to expand in this region and opening an office and setting it up and growing a team, well, this could be a path. Let's explore as one of the paths. The other one, I really loved. I really love what sovereign wealth funds are doing in this region, because it's about, well, economy is shifting from oil to knowledge base. They have a lot of capital, more than regional VCs. Sovereign wealth funds, I think it's an interesting area that will be disrupting or changing a number of things, and they already are. So I've been looking into that as a path as well. I've been looking into, I have a lot of expertise. Maybe I can set up some sort of consulting advisory and help other people. And then, of course, looking at also at, I put 3, 4, 5 paths that I say, look, let's not put all the eggs in one basket. Let's think portfolio.
Yeah.
And this is one of the takeaways or lessons learned from an experience like you are in a big company, it feels like it's safe, super secure, and then things change, right? So,
sure, yeah.
And you're still there, out there. So my lesson learned, and as well, especially thinking about young people, students or university age, right? So is careers are changing, so they're not linear anymore, right? So that's a given, that's a fact. So why think about building a career path? Think about building a portfolio of things. The matter, what makes a difference is the percentage of time you allocate, right? So maybe you have a 70% thing that is your main thing, and 30% of time that you divide into other 2-3 things.
Okay.
Certainly, you're not going to do hundreds of things, right? So you need to be focused. You need to have quality time.
So a focused portfolio in a way.
A focused portfolio. A focused portfolio of things that, because maybe what I realized on myself, and I've seen in many other people in these last months, is you might have a lot of different passions or interests.
Yes.
And maybe you realize that, hey, I really love this, but I didn't spend enough time, and I would love to go a bit deeper into this.
Yeah.
Or I see that the future here, there are so many interesting things, right? So that you might be doing. So, but if you don't put a framework or a context around it and say, look, I really want to have a portfolio strategy.
Okay.
Focus one. So I really want to dedicate this percentage of time to this thing, and this other to this, and this other to this, right? So it has to be intentional. So you need to architect for it. Not let it go. You let go things when they're gone, right? So you need to, but when you want to build for it a plan, my learning has been, well, if this is it, let's build a portfolio. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So as long as, of course, the things can complement each other, there is compliance around it, and
that's what I was going to ask you. So is it important for them to be in a way different yet similar, or can help each other, or does it? Because sometimes if I'm thinking of a portfolio strategy, I'm like, okay, these are 3 things I'm very passionate about. These are 3 areas, but they're 3 completely different things. So being ad hoc, is that more detrimental, I guess, when it comes to the planning?
No, look, I think both can be done. It's a matter of clarity and time, right, and commitment. For me, the thinking was to try to find things that are complementary. Why? Because if I have a conversation with someone, the thing is that with that conversation, I can have multiple follow-ups, and I can help that person from different angles. So if the hats that I'm wearing are complementary, I'm actually optimizing my time, right? So I'm spending time with helping a single institution or a single entity or a single person, and then I can help him from the different hats that I can wear. Why not? It's optimizing the time and taking 3 birds instead of 2 with one hat or whatever the say is, right? So, so in my opinion, if you ask me, I would rather prefer to find things that are complementary, because I like to find these synergies, right? So and chances are, for the complexity of things that we are living today, you cannot cover everything from one angle, right? So, but if you can wear different hats and then connect with more partners, then you're really helping as a partner that client or that customer or that person. And then you synergize on time as well. You optimize for time, right? Because it's the really scarce resource that we have.
That's true. And I think, like you said, time is the most important, is the most scarce resource. But I love what you talked about, how finding the synergies in between and how they can complement and play into each other. And especially a good point you said is how nowadays it's not enough to just see things from one perspective. It's very beneficial, not maybe just from a efficiency standpoint, but from an optimization standpoint as well, that you can see things from different angles. And as long as they all play into each other, then that also gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of things you can do. Because maybe be like, oh, option 1 and 2 is going well, but maybe 3, okay, doesn't seem to fit in here. All right, let's focus on these. So it gives you a bit of structure, and that kind of
And one important thing that I learned as well on myself, right? So is it allows you to experiment. Because if you're stuck with one career, of course, you have to deliver on that, right? So but if you build a portfolio and you allow things that maybe have a small percentage of time, but you experiment with it, right? So you get exposed to that thing, you get your hands dirty, and you try it out, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you can find, hey, no, look, I thought it was the smallest percentage, but actually that's my real passion, and I've really tried it out. I've spent some time, so now I'm more aware of it, right? So that's the cool thing about a portfolio approach is this culture of experimentation that you build on yourself first.
Yeah.
Because then, things change so fast these days. Not only in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of economic situation you see. And so you know that in advance,
yes.
right? So waiting that things happen and then complaining about it and then seeking help afterwards, even it could still work, but why don't you accept this and you see, hey, the world is going that fast, things are changing that fast, there is that much uncertainty. So that why not building for it ahead of time, building sort of your strategy, your own portfolio that can be flexible enough,
yes.
or mitigate the risks of that might be coming down the line. And meanwhile, you have fun, right? Because you do things that you like and you build it as a portfolio. So I'm more into this sort of mindset these days than when I started straight off university. I didn't have that mindset. It was a long time ago, okay,
yeah.
but it was like your family educated. You need to have this long-term plan. Yeah. You need to have this profession, this career.
Yeah.
I said, look, you were thinking, okay, I'm doing a good job, so maybe I get a promotion. You
ride the corporate ladder.
Yeah, the corporate ladder, right? So, but honestly, I think that word is gone. We just need to as well let it go, right?
Interesting.
So
okay.
It doesn't exist anymore, and that certainty doesn't exist anymore. So, but the thing is, you cannot make it an excuse. You know that it's like that today. So build for that in mind, with that in mind, right? So
you're saying being, it sounds like you're saying to be proactive about it.
Be proactive about it, intentional and proactive, right? So don't wait that someone else will do that for you, but also be intentional, right? So nobody will ever tell you, oh, this is your portfolio.
Yeah.
Like nobody was telling you, oh, this is going to be your career.
Yes.
So you need to build it yourself.
Yeah.
And you need to be a little bit more entrepreneurial probably, because again, it's about, allocating the time in a way that you make things work, right? So it has to work.
Yeah.
But it's fun, and it's it allows you that flexibility. That is the thing that you might need as well. Being prepared to pivot things.
Pivot,
right?
exactly.
Like what we advise to founders in a startup. We tell them, oh, you need to be ready to pivot. But how would you do that?
There you go. That's where it comes in. Yeah, the implementation of that pivot. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. Yeah. And you said something. First of all, I think it's the first time I've heard of a portfolio approach. I think it's from my perspective, for me personally, I think that's a much healthier way to evaluate your, in quotation marks, your career or the trajectory that you want to go through. And like you said, because sometimes I feel like, and would love to hear your perspective on this, is we get our identity becomes our careers in a way. For example, like when you meet someone, typically like, hi, I'm Khaled. Oh, hi, Roberto. How are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
And what do you do? And it tends to become who you are. I am X. So I guess with this approach, from my perspective, I feel it addresses that.
Yeah. I agree. So the real question should be who you are, right? So, but what do you do doesn't necessarily define who you are.
True.
Hopefully, because you are not only your work, right? So there is way more than that. So I agree with that. Is about that the question is beautiful. I think is a matter of identity, as you said, because for example, I've been working in big brands, Google, Microsoft, and one big mistake that I've seen many colleagues do in these companies is identifying themselves with the brand, with the company.
Okay.
So, and these are beautiful companies, right? So great companies. Google has set a completely new way of doing culture, for example, very open, based on your impact outcomes, flexible, super cool, right? So the thing is, when you work in these companies, sometimes, most of the times is the brand, of course, has a lot of power. Right?
Sure.
So if you want to talk to a CMO and you are working at Google, most likely that door is open, right? So you don't really need to fight a lot to open that door, because probably there is an intention or an attention or a willingness to listen.
Yes.
And because of the brand. But what is really because of you? Because at the end of the day, you are not Google.
Yeah.
You are yourself. Of course, you are, building your own experience at Google. You're building your network. You're contributing to it, right? So, but you are not Google. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that, switch off and say, oh, I'm arrived here. So I am Google. I am with Google. I am Google. And they make it Google, or like, I am Google, right? So I am the brand. No, that's not you. Google is the brand, and someone else built that brand, right? So you are definitely worth being in such a company because, usually these companies are hiring smart people with great experience, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you are not that company, right? So you're still you. So, and this is a big issue because when these people try then to get different jobs, and, the question is, what did you do, but what did you make it happen because of you? It's the because of you and not because of the brand, right? So because then when you move away from such companies and you go to a startup or a company that, has less powerful brand, then it's more about what's the delta, what's the difference that you can make. Right? So, and don't get me wrong, there are still plenty of things you learn in these companies, but still, a lot of people give it for granted, or they make they leverage the brand in a way, oh, I am one of those, right? So, and I believe this is a big mistake. Yeah. Because when one day you will wake up and you will realize, now, the things that were given for granted here or that were available here, in this other environment, they are not available anymore. So now I need to do that work myself, and maybe they didn't do it before, or they didn't. So the identity thing is a big thing. So and it's always good to, in my opinion, to take some time to disconnect from yourself, to and look to yourself from different eyes, or recharge and reconnect, and ask that question that you ask, who you really are, right? So I've been attending this. I've been doing my exec MBA at HBS. Okay. And one of the modules was about authentic leadership. And the professor was really great because he was really challenging people on thinking about the real inner purpose and, and a lot of consideration about what does it mean to be an authentic leader. And during that module, it came a point where the professor was challenging all of us to put on a piece of paper, on a blank sheet of paper, what is your purpose in life? And listen, we were probably 160 people in the cohort, all exec people with great experience, at least 15 to 20 years experience working, right, in great companies, accomplishing great things. The majority of the people in that room, they were not able to fill in that blank sheet of paper. They left it blank. They didn't know what to write on it.
Wow.
You see, because once you're challenged in it, it's not just, I don't know, I'm a CFO in a big financial insurance company. Is that your purpose in life?
Yeah.
What's your real purpose in life? And ultimately, it's the question of who you really are, right? So what's the legacy you want to leave behind? Why are you doing what you're doing? So those are questions that we don't spend enough time asking, and we don't make ourselves time to self-reflect on those first, without waiting someone to push us to ask those questions, right? So maybe it's a matter of experience in your life. So at some point in your life, something happens that makes you, blink. Oh,
like that wake-up call.
Yeah, wake-up call, right? So it might happen that way, but why not, factoring it from the very beginning and say, look, let me think through it, because I don't want to spend time doing things that is a waste of time, is not adding value to any other people, is not making an impact, is not making any difference, right? It's just because it's a paid job, right? But who you really are is the key questions, right, to start from.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I'm very surprised that, people like yourself who are in that program, who have that much experience after all this time, would struggle to answer that question. And when you're talking about purpose and asking yourself those questions, would you agree or disagree that question, if you ask it to me now, for example, as Khaled at 32, and ask me that question now as Khaled at like 40, is that going to be the same answer?
No, look, I believe that the answer to that question might change with time.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
It might change because still you're living, right? So, and you're getting into experience, you're bonding with other people, you're forming and forging relationships, you're learning yourself during the journey. So I believe that the answer to that question might change. In other situations, maybe you have people that I really got what's my purpose in life, and they stick to it because it's what really drives them and who they really are, right? So, but it might change because in my opinion, it's a search for, you're searching for it. sometimes the answers are not straightforward. It depends on many things. Maybe it depends on your background, where you're coming from, your early childhood experience, your education that you received, the conditions of life that you have been going through. It depends on many things.
True.
But I'm sure that at some point in life, there are moments where you realize that, right? Because we are human beings. We are not made for being behind the desk and work 24/7, and we are not made for efficiency. Sometimes it's good to be slow in doing something and enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
And spending those moments enjoying it rather than being super extremely efficient.
Yeah.
That efficiency concept is coming from the industrial age where there was a need for that. But life is still broader than that, luckily, right? So it's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
So I believe that the answer to the question might change with time.
Okay.
The important thing is making time to ask that question.
Yeah.
And that self-awareness that you need to have. Because sometimes I've noticed a lot of people, they go into a sort of a routine, right? So because they've been told to do so, because they don't know, they have not seen any other way, right? So it's like, when the horses that run the race and they have this...
the blinders on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they feel that maybe they're running as fast, but they don't see the others are running faster, right? So it's the sort of same of thing. So, but once you have those moments, but you need to factor in those moments as well. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Again, being intentional in that, because it's a matter of, you only own your time. There is no excuse for that, right? So you can always factor in time where you self-reflect on that, you ask that questions, you spend time, seeking for feedback, seeing how other people are seeing you, changing the way you see things, because there is this sequence of things, right? It starts from the way you see things that influence the way you think, you feel, and then the actions that you take, right? So it's the usual. So it starts with how you see the world, and how do you see the world? You can change it if you are exposed to feedback or thoughts from other people. You read, different opinions, different perspectives. You immerse yourself into a diverse network. So you just don't build a network, right? So build a diverse network. Force yourself into uncomfortable conversation. Try to do things that you don't know how to do. Those things will will help you to see things differently. And from there, it's a chain, right? So if you see things differently, you start thinking differently, and it's all connected.
It's that loop. It's that loop. I think what you said is great, because it's if you haven't, coming back to the question, my purpose now might not be the same thing down the line, but I do feel, and like you said, there are people who do find it, and that's what it is, which is great. But I think the continuous search and continuous reflection and asking yourself these kind of questions is one day how you, we said, how you will actually get there. Something that when someone asks that question is like, this is it, and you internally, emotionally feel that. It's not just, I like to say it. No, this is what feels I resonate with the most. This purpose or this cause.
100%. And by the way, in my opinion, this applies to individuals, to us as human beings, but also to organizations, to companies. Mm-hmm. So a company should constantly ask itself, why are we in this business? So why are we here for? Who? What's the purpose? Who we are serving for? Who do we care for? Right. So these sort of questions that help, keep the company real. Right. So grounded on. There is a sense of purpose. Not only because today consumers demand more brands that have a purpose, right? But for you as well to survive or to reinvent yourself. More than survive, I don't like survive. It seems like you're there trying to stay alive, right? So, but reinventing, reimagining yourself. There are plenty of companies that have been able to do that. Maybe companies that started building hardware, and they ended up producing mobile phones, like Nokia, for example, from refrigerators to mobile phones, and then we know what happened with them, and examples like that. Yeah. How come certain companies are able to reinvent themselves and say, how come you were building refrigerators, now you're doing mobile? So, but yes, because they ask it themselves ahead of time and constantly probably these questions, right? So, and they put it on the table, and they have conversations, meaningful conversations around those. So same thing for a company, same for a human being, right? So what's your purpose, who you are, and because that drives what you're doing. Otherwise it's a sequence of things that you do that at some point it will come in your life, right? It's the moment where you say the haha or the wake up call and say, what am I doing in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years?
That what am I doing question,
What am I doing question,
Yeah, when you haven't, I guess, reflected on it, there will be a time at some point that you will wake up and ask yourself that question, because you will have, I guess you wouldn't have had the direction to think about, oh, this is why I'm doing these things.
Yeah.
But coming back to something you said earlier about being entrepreneurial, and this is something that I really wanted to dive into a bit more today, because entrepreneurship, I feel, at least when I was growing up, first of all, it's something that I'd never heard of. Like, I think if you look back 30 years ago, like at my parents' time or whatever, if they started something themselves, they were just a business owner. There wasn't this, I guess, like image or this term entrepreneur that is so widely used and that we use all the time now. Yep. I think growing up, I started hearing that word more, and then what is it, and so on. So I wanted to start, first of all, by, a lot of people say there are people who are entrepreneurs and there are people who take a career path, right? Mm-hmm. And the question I always think about is, can anyone be an entrepreneur? And is it just a skill set that you can train and learn, or does your character really come into it?
That's a wonderful question. So I don't have the research background to probably give you, but I give you my point of view. And my point of view is that for what I have observed, it's a mix of both. So
okay.
So to your question is, I don't think that everybody can be an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. Everybody can be an entrepreneur. Everybody can start something new, right? So, so everybody can be an entrepreneur from that perspective. But then being a successful entrepreneur, to me, implies that you are, at some point, you're also someone who can really make hard calls, for example. Why? Because when you're building something from scratch, maybe you need to, and maybe you took a wrong direction. You realize that, shifting to the right direction, to a new direction, it's not something that everyone would be willing to do, or able or willing to do, because it means that you need to make some hard decisions quickly. And not all characters are born like that. Can you learn about that? Probably you can learn by observation, by spending time with, by shadowing. Yeah, but then it's a matter also of timing. Successful entrepreneurs sometimes is you need to get the timing right. And maybe if you are too late, then it's gone, the opportunity is gone. If you are too early as well, it could be not the right time, right?
Exactly.
So in my opinion, to your question, it's something that what I have observed, the most successful entrepreneurs, or the entrepreneurs I would consider successful, are ones that have it inside them, that have been willing to listen and to tweak a certain aspects of what they're doing, but the core of it is falling in love with the problem, that commitment, being able to inspire people to follow you for a cause or for a reason, making hard calls, giving clarity and that sense of purpose to people, and getting them to. So it's not something that everybody is able to do, or it's in their course, or not every people is willing to do certain things, right? So, and then let's not forget it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. So
it's very hard. Again,
stats are there, right? I'm not reinventing anything. So 95 or more than 90% of early stage startups fail. So
it's 90. It's that high.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of the early stage startups, it's very high.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that means that you need to be coping with that, right? So with failure, and accept it, embrace it, learn from it, pivot quickly from it, and not get frustrated by it and get stuck by it, right? So not get drawn by it. So not all characters have that mindset or that approach or that attitude towards failure, right? So experimenting as well, the way you make decisions, right? So you need to put things out there, run experiments, understand, get out of the building, understand your customers. Get empathy with your customers and understand what is the real need, what is the real need in a certain circumstance, and understand if your product is. Also, there is this thing that sometimes entrepreneurs go through a slippery slope, right? So most entrepreneurs, they love their ideas. They think, oh, I got it. I got it. I have this product. It solved this problem. The product is in my mind. This is how it should be. I got it. And then they start believing into it, and believing to a point where maybe sometimes it's a slippery slope, because they believe it to a point where it's a distortion of reality, and then becomes completely off, right? So there is a fine line that successful entrepreneurs are able to deal with somehow.
Yeah.
And it's art and science. It's not just so it's a mix of character. It's a mix of attitude of who you are as a person, plus of course things that you can learn.
Yeah.
But the things that you can learn, are not enough.
Yeah.
The same way when we say, you should be creative, thinking creatively. That's great. Allowing in a company for psychological safety, flat organization, have people to disagree. That's all great. But is that enough? No, you need to bring some discipline to that creative process because things need to converge, things need to happen. And the entrepreneurs are a both end sort of people. Are people that their thinking is not either or. It can be both end, and say they listen, but they make things happen. So they are biased for action. They stick more to the problem rather than just a solution. So they avoid that slippery slope. They inspire people to follow. They brought people into their cause.
Yeah.
So that's difficult to achieve. That's we don't have to forget that. It's not easy.
I think you made a very, very good point. If what I've understood from you is there's so much more involved in being an entrepreneur than just a pure skill set. And even if you can improve that skill set and you can be better at maybe making tough decisions, strategizing, planning, whatever, there's going to come a point that if your personality or your character, which there's nothing wrong with that, it just doesn't fit into the mold of things you're going to need to do to make that work, then there's a chance, never say never, but there's a chance you will not be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, because think about it. When let's take an investor mindset towards early stage startups, for example. So do you think that investors really know that the startup that they're investing in an early stage will be successful? They don't. What they're really investing into most of the times is the people that is in front of them, the founder, the entrepreneur, or the A team if there is already a small A team around him, right? So or her. So it's ultimately it's about people and who they are, who the entrepreneur is, who she is, who he is as a person. Why you are willing to live a decent life in terms of comfortable life, fixed time schedules and safety if you want.
Yeah.
For something that is that uncertain, right? So what bothers you that much to leave all of that? So to me, what makes the big difference is those ones that really see a big problem and fall in love with the problem. So they like to stay with the problem more than with the solution, especially the early stage, right? So they really want to nail it down and understand, well, if I solve this, a lot of people will get a benefit out of it because I'm really, getting to the root of something that bothers me or bothers a number of people, and that's what should be at the heart of entrepreneurship, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. Becoming, I'm going to use this term, but that's not what I mean. Obsessed with fixing that problem is where I guess it all stems from, and how you layer and build on top of that. And I think you made a great point about how investors think about it like this, because it's funny, but Shark Tank is a show that I think I've watched for many, many years, and I think many people have. And honestly, it really does help you think about entrepreneurship, because you hear the questions that they ask and whatever. And even sometimes when, let's say, the numbers don't justify a certain type of investment or so on, but they really do, but they believe that this person will be able to do it. Yeah. They will make it up. So it just shows the importance of the people aspect.
You make a bet or an investment, if you prefer, on the person, right? Yeah. So, and the commitment the person has to solve that problem, and the why that person is solving that problem, and the strength and the commitment that he or she brings around trying to solve that problem, right? Yeah. So that's one thing. Of course, then there should be unit economics, some other things. Those are things that definitely you can learn, right? Yeah. So it's not rocket science. The unit economics of a business, I mean, that's again, but the other element is the difficult one to find and to spot, right? So especially early on, because it's easy for us to tell now, but once you are in it, then it's difficult to spot.
That's true. And so coming back to, so we said character plays a big role in becoming a successful entrepreneur. Now obviously there's people that from a young age you hear them talk about they always want to start something. That's who they are. That's what they do. If one thing doesn't work, they will try something else. But entrepreneurship, let's say, is the direction that they want to go. Let's say for the other people that are open to the idea, they don't have one necessarily in their mind. It's not something that they're super passionate about. Do you only, in both examples, so there's one that really love and this is what they want to do, and some that are like, they're open to it, but would most likely prefer a more structured career path. Mm-hmm. Do you only truly find out if you are once you do it?
That's a great question. So I am a believer of this can do or doing sort of attitude, right? So because if you get your hands dirty, chances are you expose yourself, right? So you prove yourself, or you understand where the limits are, the barriers are. If you're hitting a wall, if you like it or not like it, you need to have fun as well doing it, or and how you perceive time. Like, so one indicator is time flows when you do something you really love doing it, right? So it's straightforward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things like that. So I'm a believer of doing things. That's why this connects back with the conversation we had of the portfolio career, right? So. Try to make the time to do things. Maybe again, it's a matter of time, right? So you cannot do everything. Sure. But factoring things. So I've set the right expectations as well on your commitment on time, but still build yourself situations where you can expose, experiment, break rules, experiment, build experiments, run stuff, right? So your hands needs to become dirty.
Yes.
You need to do it.
Yeah.
Because reading about someone else might be great as a source of inspiration. Let's do it, definitely, yes. But it might not work for you.
True.
Again, the first question is still who you are.
Yeah.
So in both scenarios is about who you are. But how can you discover that? So only if you expose yourself to situations that are not in your comfort zone, in my opinion, right? Yeah. So when you expose yourself in uncomfortable situations is where you are measuring yourself with something that is unknown, right? So you know this Johari matrix where you have the known knowns, unknown unknowns, and the matrix, right? So there is a lot of unknowns about each one of us. So. But again, it's something that you know in advance. You don't know what the unknowns are, but you know that there is an area, a gray area about yourself, because either you didn't seek feedback from others, you don't see yourself, you didn't spend enough time for self-reflection, self-awareness, this kind of stuff. But as you know in advance that that's the case, the strategy that you might build for yourself is allowing for some vulnerability, so being comfortable not having all the answers, and exposing yourself in situations that, stretch you out, because when there is friction, most likely you are going to learn something out of it. Your resistance to something, your attitude to something, and you're getting more feedback as well from people. So you're reducing this unknown zone. So my answer to your question would be, it's not the only way.
Sure.
But in my opinion, yes, probably the best way is to learn by doing, right? Yes. So going out there, getting out of the building, getting uncomfortable, architecting situations where you can get uncomfortable on purpose, just for you to learn about yourself and from others. Because by doing that, you will get immediately a sense check of how you're feeling in that situation. And also you're starting, right? So it's not just about talking about it. There is a lot of people that do the theory about these things and they talk about this, but the reality is, just go out there. What works for someone doesn't work for someone else, right? So you need to figure it out for yourself. What's your purpose, who you are, get out there, get your feelings, feel it, right? So feel it if it's something that you like doing, you don't like doing, how much it's stretching you. Are you willing to do certain compromises? Because as an entrepreneur, chances are you need to make things happen, right? So, if you work 9-6, then you know in advance, hey, this is my life. It's 9-6, blah, blah, blah. But if you're as an entrepreneur, probably that concept of time as well, it's something you need to be comfortable with, a different concept of time, which is there is a degree of uncertainty more, right, that you are not familiar with. So, it's learning by doing, in my opinion. It's getting out there and try to not talk too much, right? Is you can try to implement things, you can try to make things happen, and you see if you are able to drive things. Also, when it comes to people, one thing that I think an entrepreneur should have as a characteristic, as a character, is bringing people with her or with him to follow, right? So if you don't expose yourself to people in conversations, in uncomfortable conversation, how do you know if people will follow you? It's not just by reading a good book about communication, best practices on social media, how to post and whatever, right? So people don't follow because of that. We follow because they buy into your purpose. You bring clarity about that, so you're very clear on what are the goals, what is it you want to achieve, and you bring that sense of energy. Positive energy, so positive tension. So people follow that, right? Because they feel that they're part of a movement, that they're part of a cause, something bigger than them, right? So, but again, how do you know if you're able to do so? If you close yourself in your office, in your room, in your house, whatever, no, you need to get out there. So it's only by doing, right? So to me, there is no other way around it. It's you need to experiment yourself.
Exactly. And I think coming back to the framework you talked about and on the concept of experimentation, it's not like to find out if you truly are an entrepreneur, you have to dive in headfirst 100%, but you can do and put yourself in certain situations and do little experiments in certain areas to test yourself to see, oh, maybe I'm not comfortable, making this decision about, maybe hire or fire someone, or I'm not very comfortable about, I don't talk to people that much. I'm not the best communicator, you know what I mean? So I think I completely agree with what you said. Learning by doing is where you will learn the most, and it's probably the truest answer that you're going to get, whichever perspective or whichever way it leans you. But like you said, I think you made a good point that create like you said, a portfolio strategy or the space to allow yourself, to find out. So when it comes to people say, I've heard this many times, and I'm curious to see what you think. Some people say that you're not a true entrepreneur until your business can operate without you. What are your thoughts?
Let me think about it. It's. I would say I would apply this definition to the definition of leadership.
Okay.
More than entrepreneur.
Okay, interesting.
So I would say, let me try to rephrase it. You're not a true leader unless people will be, keep delivering or acting as, even if you're not there, right? So even if you're not in the room. Why? Because in my opinion, the job of a leader is to empower others. So you are successful as a leader if you make other people successful. This is my way of looking at leadership. So you are a great leader if you empower other people to be successful, because by making them successful, they will make you successful.
Exactly.
I see it as a consequence of.
Yes.
So if you are not there anymore as a leader, but you have empowered those people, then you have done the job of a leader,
Gotcha.
even if you're not there.
Gotcha.
As an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur a leader? Yes. So from a leadership perspective, I would say the definition applies. But maybe entrepreneurship is also about doing and making things happen, right? So maybe this is a tricky question, because maybe it depends on the size of the company or stuff like that. But I would say an entrepreneur is yes. I mean, from a leadership perspective, an entrepreneur is, let's say you build a company and you make that your company and the people in the company be able to walk on their legs, right, and take it to the next phase of success.
Sure.
Yes. Or you as an entrepreneur, you realize that you get to a phase of your company where you're not the best person anymore to be the CEO of a larger organization, because you as an entrepreneur, you're driven by starting something and getting to a stage where someone else will take it forward. That's also a great entrepreneur, someone who recognizes that, acknowledge that, and empower other people to take forward, because he's not scared. Like I had the chance to meet this successful serial entrepreneur. His name is Yuri Levin. He's the co-founder of Waze. I was at Google when he sold the company to Google, and he sold the company the same night that he left Waze the same night that the company was sold to Google. Why? Because he said, look, now the company is at a stage where someone else will take it to the next level, right? So I've done my job and I will still be part of that company somehow. And he went to found a new startup that became another unicorn, Move It. And now he has a portfolio of other 13 startups, 3 or 4 are on the way to unicorn in the next 2 years, right?
Wow.
So 2 or 3 years. So the mindset of this person, where I spent some time to talk to him, the mindset of this person is what you said, like, even if I'm not in the room as an entrepreneur, but I've built something that inspires other people to follow and take it forward, right? So he's not jealous. He's not driven by the title. Oh, I am an entrepreneur. I built a startup. It became a unicorn. Now I'm the CEO of the unicorn.
Yes.
No, his mindset is, I'm still an entrepreneur. I love solving problems. So I set this up. Now this is successful. Someone can take to the next level of being successful. I focus on, again, building from scratch. So it really depends to me on the real entrepreneurs love solving problems, right? So they thrive in that environment. So from a certain perspective, then the answer to your question is probably yes. Probably real successful entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs would love someone else taking it over. From them to build to the next level, because what they really enjoy in doing is solving problems.
Yeah.
And so the starting from scratch doesn't bother them or doesn't scare them, right? So, and it's interesting also, now that you mentioned that statement, is the parallel with how we define leadership and how we define entrepreneurs. There is of course an overlap, right? An entrepreneur is sort of a leader,
of course,
because he's leading people. But it's interesting to see also that as a pure entrepreneur, there is also this aspect of the building phase and letting it go at some point.
Yeah. I think I love how you looked at it from a leadership lens, and kind of that if you're not in the room or you're not like in the day-to-day of the business and you take a back seat and the business runs perfectly smooth without you, you've done a great job.
That's the culture of the organization, right?
Exactly.
And it's the job of the leader or the leadership team to set it up.
To set it up,
right?
exactly.
You're not there. It's not that because you're there, or people say, oh, we need to show that we are working.
Exactly.
That's the worst culture probably possible, right? So there is no trust effectively on both ways. And it cannot work, right? So the job of the entrepreneur and or leader in this, if we broaden the conversation, is definitely to set the right culture, which also means is way beyond setting up a nice environment with colors and stuff like that. It's more about, let's start from the real important things, which is, do I trust the people I bring on board? Yes. How we build that trust, and how do we measure the success, right? So how do we empower these people to be successful? So sometimes entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, they make the mistake to focus most of the time on the jobs to be done. There is a lot of literature about the theory of the first principles, jobs to be done, and there's nothing wrong about that. It's something that should be done, right? So, but they lose sight of what are the sources required to get those jobs done. So how do you enable the people to?
Exactly.
And that's the job of the leader / or entrepreneur, right? So to set up, and culture is part of it, because it's one of the sources that you need to thrive as an organization and to allow, look, I trust my team, I trust my people. I don't have to be there all the time. Everybody's empowered with autonomy because there are clear goals, clear objectives, but also the measure of success. So I'm measuring you on the impact you're returning, on the outcome you're returning. If there is something wrong, we take necessary corrections and pivot, etc. Right? So, but it's all clear. Yeah. There are still a lot of organizations where they don't bring that clarity to their teams. So you do a lot of effort, but you don't know why you're doing it. And that's the worst situation, right? Because you do a lot of work, but if you don't know why you're doing that work, it's meaningless and it's hard work. Right?
Yeah,
so,
of course.
and it doesn't return also to your mental health or to your well-being, right? So, so that clarity that comes from the top is essential, but the culture that comes with it is even more essential. Yeah. So you need to trust your people. You need to build an environment where people are empowered. They like, being themselves. Yes. They're trusted. They have autonomy. Of course, they accept that they are measured on the outcome, the impact they make. Yes. This is how it should be.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. But one thing I've been reflecting on, like as our conversation has been going, is even I think underestimate the amount of things you need to juggle as an entrepreneur, which kind of brings me on to my next question, because this is where I guess I am at the moment and my mindset. So I'm curious to hear from someone like you what you think. So I personally, I felt like I've always wanted to do my own thing, which is now what I'm doing now, which is why me and you are sitting here today, which is fantastic. But there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, right? So my perspective is, or at least the way I want to do things is, I want to be, that guy. Oh, we need a podcast. Who's the best? Okay, Khalid. Great. Okay, we're going to call him. That is, I want to build myself in that way. Now, I know there's that famous saying, you want to go fast, go with people. If you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with people. So I do get the question sometimes on, down the line in a few years, do I want to, expand this, build a company and hire people and so on. And I don't really know if that's something I want to do. At the moment, at least as today, this is the route that I prefer. But I do feel there are limitations, or it's harder. I thought being a solopreneur, by the way, would be so much simpler than being an entrepreneur because I'm like, I don't have to hire people. The only thing is my experience and my time. That's all I have to do. So it's a lot easier. And, this is okay. It's year one. I'm still learning. But I can say very confidently that it's, I'm not saying it's harder, but it's just as hard. So from your perspective, what did you see as, advantages and disadvantages?
No, look, yeah, exactly. Is always there is trade-off, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
Pros and cons.
Exactly. Yes.
So I would say in my opinion, the lens or the driver or the focus should be on what's the value, right? So that because there are successful startups that are solopreneurs or one entrepreneur, and there are successful startups with co-founders, right? So there have been some feedbacks I've heard in the market from mentors saying, if you're trying to raise funds and you're just one entrepreneur, it won't work because they need to see that there is a team, blah, 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 right? So yes and no. Why? I mean, it's the thing is, you don't just recruit a co-founder to raise money, right? So it doesn't make sense. So the conversation to me, or the lens, should be around what's the value of having a co-founder or co-founders versus being myself alone. It could be that, for example, you realize that to build what you're set to build and to realize your vision, you need some complementary skills to bring on the table, right? So, and again, there are different ways of doing that. It could be that you hire people in your team reporting to you that have those skills, but it could be that you need that at the founding team level to complement that vision and make it solid and stuff like that. So that could be one reasoning, right? So am I enough to run this in terms of make things happen and relies on the vision and bring clarity and stuff like that, right? So it might be that you end up answering this question with a positive yes and say, it depends on the size of the business, the type of the business. It depends on many things as well.
Of course.
So, but it could be that you answer the question yes, but it could be that you say, look, I really acknowledge that I really need a co-founder that complements me from this perspective. For example, typical is the case where you have a technical co-founder that struggles with the go-to-market, the building a business plan, the financial modeling of it, because he said, I have the idea, I really see that there is the problem and need, and this could be the solution, but then he gets stuck because he doesn't know. So
exactly.
In that case, it could be that a co-founder that complements on the business side of things, on the go-to-market, on the financial side of things, could be an addition, right? So, but again, it always depends on because, as we said, the important thing is that when people come together, they come together with an aligned vision, and there is that environment where you can have frank, honest conversation where you agree to disagree in in a way where, because then there is also the situation where there are many co-founders or companies with multiple founders where they, just because either they were friends or they didn't think through about the governance of, then the whole things fall apart. If I'm not mistaken, there was this stat from VCs that 65% of portfolio that have received venture capital, backed by venture capital funding, they fail because of people-related issues, and within people-related issues, there is mostly issues happening between or among co-founders, right? So because they didn't disclose enough of the information ahead of time, they didn't set the right governance ahead of time, they were not really honest about the real commitment that they could put on the table, especially at the beginning, is important, and stuff like that. Extremely important, right? So I would say, if you don't find yourself in a situation where you have the confidence that the people, the other founder or more co-founders that you are bringing on board, have that level of conversation, transparency, commitment, honesty about that, and you intentionally set up that governance ahead of time openly, right? So with the other co-founders, then probably there is no premise, right, to think about, oh, I should have. So that is a necessary element to make it work, right?
That's a great point.
Again, it depends on many factors, right? So we are not trying to give you now the right answer for every single situation, because it's impossible.
There is exactly.
But in terms of principles, I would say, I hate when I read, oh, if you're just a solo founder, don't go for raising funds, because what's the point? Why? It could definitely work even if you're just a solo founder in some situations, right? So it depends on many other things. So I wouldn't make it a sort of a rule, or it really depends on the alchemy, the team, the people that you bring on board, how they come together, what's the aligned and unified vision of that team. What is it they really share? What is it they put on the table? What is their commitment? How they, set the governance and stuff like that. That's extremely important too.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to seek advice if you have never done it before.
Exactly.
From people who have done it, who have really done it, and say, look, I tried to do what I got screwed that time because, I didn't think of discussing this with a potential co-founder and I got screwed. It's important learnings that you want to learn, you want to listen, right? So those things, yes, you need to seek yourself mentors or people who have done it and can share those stories, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, exactly. And I think you made a great point that there's so many factors when it comes to deciding either, to build a business with people or to do it on your own, or even just come up with the idea, whatever the case might be. Yep. There's a lot of external factors besides, just you and yourself and the idea. But what I like is, and I think for, young people and students that are, listening to this, or anyone looking to start a business, is to think before you do it, whatever you're planning to do, you have to think, sit down, take the time, think about all these different things, because there's a lot to think about, and then see, it could be a simple pros and cons list. Okay, I'm more pro, I can do 3 things here, and here I can only do 1 thing. Okay, then maybe it makes sense to, look down this path, or vice versa.
And one way to do that is seeking advice, right? So
exactly.
I wouldn't seek advice from people who have not done what they talk about.
I see.
So I would spend time. It's more difficult. It requires more effort, because maybe those real people maybe have less time, so you need to convince them somehow.
Yeah.
But it's more valuable, right? So you need to spend the time to find the right mentors, the right advisors, people that have really done what they are talking about. They have been there. They can share real stories, real feedback. They have been screwed themselves, or they've been successful themselves as well, or both sides, right? So but people who have done it, because there is a lot of people that recycle themselves as mentors in the ecosystem, but they've never done it. They've never been entrepreneurs. They've never been investors. So they just read a lot of good advice, good books,
and I'm sharing it now with you.
And sharing it now, which is fine. You can read a lot of books. You can listen to this advice. It's not bad. But what I'm saying, if your time, you decide how cheap is your time. You decide.
That's great.
Absolutely.
That's great.
You decide how cheap is your time. It's valuable also for you, even if you're a young student that has an idea, right? So your time shouldn't be cheap. So you should spend time with people that has really something to share with you, something valuable that you can get out of them, right? So, and that requires some research, some work, some effort, because maybe these people that you really want to get in touch with, maybe they're busy and you're not on the radar. They don't give you attention, right? So, but it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. It means that imagine the dynamics of life. So,
of
right?
course,
so you need to really spend time, putting yourself, identifying yourself situations where you increase the chances of, right? So it's not guaranteed for success, but that should be the intention, in my opinion, because your time is valuable and you should get this advice from people. And the other thing is, we mentioned about co-founders, but also usually, what you usually have to do is also set up your advisory board, right? So, and because there you seek senior people that, can help you fast track certain things or give you advice on specific issues, topics that you're trying to solve that they've been going through, or they have a network that can open for you, right? So being mindful, being also intentional about the advisory board, not too many people, not too few, and the right people there as well. It's something that probably is going to make a difference in the governance and in the execution of things in your company. So it's another thing that you might want to look into.
Thank you for listening to part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Coming soon. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the AUD podcast channel. We really hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. We have a lot of incredible guests lined up for you on the show, and we're so excited to bring you their inspiring stories. To stay up to date with all the latest episode releases, please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on the AUD Instagram page at AUD Dubai.